Red Genesisa Sci-Fi Epic of Time, Memory and Martian Legacy. Prologue. The Red Veil, they called it the Red Veil. It wasn't supposed to exist, not in the airless void above Mars, not where satellites had scanned every inch of terrain, mapped every crater, probed every rock for signs of water, life or history, and yet it appeared, first as a whisper of distortion on an orbital feed, then a flicker, then a storm of color where there should have been none, a ribbon of crimson light unfurled across the Martian sky, like a wound tearing open across time itself. Satellites went blind. Magnetometers screamed. The light danced like northern auroras, but angrier, twisting violently, pulsing with intelligence. Then, the impossible happened. 13 seconds. That's how long the rift stayed open. In those 13 seconds, high-resolution telescopes captured something that defied every model of Martian geology and planetary evolution. A city. Not ruins, not dust. A breathing civilization, silhouetted, against a sapphire blue sky. Towers that reached like blades into heaven, gliders arcing through the air, reflections of sunlight off water, real and rippling. The images were broadcast around the world, then locked, black-boxed, classified instantly. Governments panicked. Agencies scrambled. Every cultural historian, linguist, astrophysicist, and military tactician worth a damn was pulled into emergency briefing rooms, because the city wasn't new. It was ancient, and far, far too familiar. One archaeologist broke protocol and whispered it aloud. That glyph on the central spire, it matches one from a Sumerian ziggurat in Iraq, a god name, Ares. Mars. The myths weren't myths, they were memories. Something or someone once called that planet home, and they left a message. Or maybe a trap. Earth year. 2049, a multi-agency expedition is launched under the guise of geological research. In truth, the mission is one of discovery, or containment. 6 crew members, a biologist, a linguist, a soldier, a pilot, an engineer, and a woman with a doctorate in dead languages and a tattoo of a spiral galaxy down her spine. Dr. Alia Sarin. She doesn't believe in coincidence, and when she sees the red veil in person, burning like a god's eyelid over the horizon, she doesn't see danger. She sees destiny. They will step through the rift. They will walk into a living Mars, as it was before its fall. They will meet what's left of a civilization that may have given birth to Earth's first dreams, and they will learn. Some truths are not forgotten. They are buried, alive, waiting to be remembered. Chapter 1. Touchdown Mars looked dead, even now. Through the reinforced glass of the Orion Pathfinder, the red surface stretched like a lifeless scar beneath them, a canvas of silence, untouched by wind or time. No rivers, no clouds, just dust, craters and shadow. And yet, there it is, whispered Dr. Alia Sarin. She didn't mean the landing site. Beyond the jagged rim of Valles Marineris, just beyond the visible spectrum, shimmered a disturbance, a distortion in light, like air bending above a road on a hot day, but sharper, deliberate, alive, the red veil. It hung in the thin sky like a crack in reality. Commander Ray Osei didn't take his eyes off it. That's no aurora, that's damn tear. A time fringe, corrected Emilio Vargas, the team's linguist and mythographer. His voice was barely audible through the comm. Localized chronometric lensing, quantum compression. We're looking at a window to the past. A doorway, Alia said, more to herself than to the crew. And someone left it open. The landing was surgical. Automated descent boosters kicked up clouds of rust-colored dust as the Orion Pathfinder touched down on the Martian surface, just 2 kilometers from the veil. The silence was immediate, total, broken only by the faint thrum of oxygen regulators and telemetry feeds. Ray stepped out first. His boots crunched onto regolith that hadn't been disturbed in millions of years. Mars was colder than he'd imagined, even through the suit's insulation. Not in temperature, in intent. This planet was watching them. Atmospheric readings, he asked. Engineer Dr. Kalen Joe scanned her display. Holding steady. Radiation spiked near the anomaly but localized. The veils emitting frequencies. What kind of frequencies? Kalen hesitated. Musical ones. They moved quickly. The rift wasn't stable. It pulsed like a beating heart, irregular and growing louder. By the time they reached the red veil, it towered over them, nearly 30 meters high, arching like the entrance to a cathedral carved from light. Inside, nothing but blurred motion and color. Shapes moved beyond the threshold. Spires, shadows, birds maybe, and a blue sky. That's not a reflection, Emilio said. That's the other side. No tether, Ray noted. No comms. Once we're through, one way in. Maybe, Aaliyah replied. She stepped closer. The ground beneath the veil was smooth, too smooth. As if someone had cleared it for their arrival, and carved into the stone at the base, barely visible beneath the dust. A single glyph. Aaliyah knelt, brushed it clean with her gloved fingers. It was a spiral, and a name. Ares. Her heart pounded. This isn't just a city, this is the origin point. The place where it all began. She stood. Activate suits. Full seal. We go in. Now. We don't even know what's waiting on the other side, Kalen shouted. Exactly, Aaliyah said. That's why we can't wait. The wind around the veil began to pick up, though Mars has no wind. The air vibrated with sound, low and harmonic, like a voice. We were expected, Emilio whispered. Aaliyah didn't hesitate. She stepped through, and the world dissolved in light and heat and memory. On the other side, Aaliyah landed on her knees. The air was warm. The sky, blue. The city stretched. Before her, impossibly vast, impossibly alive. She heard laughter, footsteps, music. Mars was living, not as it had been, but as it had never stopped being. And far above the tallest spire, etched in light across the sky itself, burned a message, not meant for Martian eyes. We are your beginning, do not forget us again. Chapter 2. The sky that breathes. Aaliyah staggered to her feet. Her boots sank slightly into soft, moss-like ground. Not dust, not sand. Soil, warm, damp, and alive. Every breath inside her suit was too loud, too fast, as her brain struggled to make sense of what her eyes told her. She was standing on Mars, but not her Mars. The sky arched overhead in brilliant sapphire, streaked with long trails of cloud. The sun was gentler here, filtered through what could only be a full atmosphere. Birds, winged creatures she couldn't identify, circled above a glittering skyline of towers and platforms that defied geometry. She turned, breath catching. Behind her, the red veil shimmered like a heat mirage. One step back, and she'd return to the cold, silent graveyard of the present. But already it was fading, pulsing slower, dimmer. She wasn't sure how much time remained. Ray? Kalen? Emilio? Do you read? No response. Just static. She was alone. Aaliyah checked her vitals, suit integrity, oxygen levels, data recorders. All stable. But something pulled at her senses, as if the air had its own voice. Not sound exactly, something beneath it. A hum, a memory. She took a cautious step forward, and the ground responded. It lit beneath her feet, golden threads tracing her path like veins. The light wasn't harsh. It was welcoming, guiding her forward. She walked. The vegetation changed from moss to a kind of bioluminescent grass, pulsing gently with each step. Ahead, archways of carved stone, too clean, too elegant, rose to meet her. Each bore symbols etched deep into the surface, spirals, eyes, stars, and beneath every symbol, a phrase repeated in dozens of languages, earth and otherwise. Children of the dust, return. She reached the outer edge of the city. Here, the buildings weren't just structures, they were singing. not audibly but resonating, as if each one held a frequency tuned to her heartbeat. Every window shimmered. Every wall shimmered. The entire city was vibrating with memory. This isn't a ruin. It's a recording, a living archive. Suddenly, a flash behind her. Another figure burst through the veil. Ray tumbled forward, landing hard. He cursed, then looked up, eyes wide. What the hell? Then Kalen, then Emilio. They all emerged, disoriented but intact. Their suits flickered, reacting to the environment, but stabilized. Where are we? Kalen asked. Breathless. Mars, Elias said, but not ours. She turned toward them, then pointed. Look! They followed her gaze. Beyond a long, arched corridor stood a tower at the city's center, twisting and floating mid-air, held in place by nothing visible. At its peak, a sphere of swirling white and crimson energy, rotating slowly, casting shadows that bent the wrong way. It looked like a heart. That structure, Emilio whispered. It's not architecture, it's a brain, a living memory core, a central archive. A library? Kalen asked. No, Elias said. A message. And then, for the first time, they heard it, a voice deep and layered, spoken inside their heads but clear as speech. It said only one thing. You have returned. You must remember. You must decide. A low rumble rolled across the ground. The sky flickered. The veil pulsed violently. Aaliyah turned and saw it. The rift was shrinking. We're losing our way home, Ray said. Then we better make this count, Aaliyah replied. Her voice was calm, but her pulse screamed otherwise. She stepped forward toward the heart of the city, and behind her Mars began to wake. Chapter 3. The First Memory. The city breathed. That was the only way Aaliyah could describe it. Walls shimmered with heatless light. Surfaces pulsed faintly, like veins. The air carried no wind, but each step forward made the structures shift. Subtly, like coral reacting to the movement of water. It was more than architecture. It was aware. They walked in silence for minutes, maybe hours. Time felt wrong here. Soft bends in gravity. No clear sun position. The red veil still hovered behind them, thinner now, flickering at the edges like a candle fighting to stay lit. Ray kept glancing back. We should mark the path. Already done, Kalen said. Her scanner left a trail of tiny light drones, breadcrumbs of photons. But if time is folding here, it won't matter. We could walk in a straight line and still end up back at the beginning. I'd rather not test that, Emilio muttered. They reached the inner sanctum. The tower was close now. It floated. Mid-air, tethered by energy tendrils that pulsed with impossible geometry. Below it a platform, circular, smooth, reflective, like glass. At its center stood a monolith, black as obsidian, carved with rotating symbols that shifted as they watched. A console, Kalen guessed. Or an altar, Emilio said. Aaliyah stepped forward. Her suit's sensors went haywire, not from failure but overload. Every frequency band lit up, gamma, thermal, radio, all singing the same tone. The monolith reacted, symbols locking into place. The platform hummed. Something's happening. Ray began, but it was too late. The world dropped out beneath their feet. Flash, they were still standing, but the city was gone. In its place, a red sky torn by storm. Lightning cracked across a black ocean. Towers burned. Gliders fell like insects from the air, and standing in the ruins, Martians tall, radiant-skinned, eyes glowing like embers. Not surprised, not afraid, resigned. They watched the sky with grim acceptance. One figure stood apart, taller, robed. Its hands glowed as it worked a control panel, stabilizing the rift they'd just entered. This is a memory, Aaliyah said. A recording, like Emilio said. The city's showing us its death. The sky split. A comet, a weapon, something massive, not natural, descended like a god's fist, a blinding impact. The world screamed. Then, silence. The scene blinked out. They were back on the platform. The tower above them now pulsed more urgently. The monolith had changed. A single line of text now glowed in ancient Martian glyphs, translated in real time by the AI in their suits. We saved. Our knowledge, we could not save ourselves. They didn't die by accident, Ray said quietly. That was targeted. A war? Emilio asked. A purge, Alia answered. Or worse, a choice. They all turned as another platform nearby lit up. Another monolith, another memory. It's leading us, Kalen whispered. One truth at a time. Breadcrumbs, Alia said. Leading to what? The tower above them pulsed again, and this time they heard the voice more clearly. Layered, male and female, old and young, speaking in perfect synchronicity inside each of their minds. You are what we were. You are what we became. You must remember. You must choose. Behind them, the red veil pulsed once more, weak, trembling. Alia looked to it. Then to the glowing tower. There were at least 6 more monoliths ahead, each waiting to reveal something buried, forgotten. Each step forward meant fewer left to turn back. We go on, she said, and they did. Chapter 4. The others before the second monolith stood beneath an arch of suspended stone, carved with fractals so precise they shimmered as the team moved around them. It pulsed once as they approached, acknowledging their presence. Alia felt the pressure again, like standing on the edge of a tide just about to crash. Ready? She asked, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. The others nodded. No one needed convincing anymore. She reached out, barely a touch, and the world cracked open again. Flash, they were standing inside a chamber of stars. Not the city, not Mars. A void filled with light threads and memory skin, as if the cosmos itself had been woven into a cathedral. Dozens, no hundreds of Martians stood encircling a massive chamber. Their eyes glowed. Their bodies flickered between solidity and light. They were watching something in the center, a group, 5 figures, clumsy, pale, human. That's us, Kalen whispered. That's Earth. The Martians stood silent. The humans in the memory looked stunned, ragged, covered in layers of fabric and exosuits long since degraded. But their expressions were unmistakable. Awe, fear, guilt. These weren't the first steps on Mars, Emilio said. We weren't the first expedition. We're the echo. The projection zoomed in on one of the humans, an older woman, thin, eyes hollow. She reached forward, spoke in something like English. The memory translated itself, voice flowing like water. We are all that's left. Earth is dying. We followed. The signal. The dream. The Martians didn't respond with words. Instead, their tower, a smaller version of the one now standing over Alia's team, glowed, and from its light emerged a seed. Not biological, not mechanical. Something in between. The lead Martian offered it to the humans. A gift, the voice translated. To begin again, to carry us forward. The memory twisted again, jumping forward. The humans now stood alone, the chamber empty, the Martians gone. Their ship departed. They didn't just visit, Ray said slowly. They left, with something. Alia's stomach dropped. The seed. No, Emilio whispered, horror blooming across his face. The seed wasn't just knowledge. It was genetic. It was them. They didn't save their world, Kalen said. They planted it in ours. The vision ended. They were back on the platform. The second monolith now glowed with a symbol of Earth. The first clear depiction they'd seen, not as a home, but as a vault. We weren't born from chance, Alia said. We were designed. Earth wasn't just evolution. It was inheritance. The myths were true, Emilio muttered. The gods came from the sky. They didn't teach us. They built us. The implications settled like dust across the team. If Mars had fallen, and the survivors seeded Earth, then every war, every wonder, every empire, every cathedral and spacecraft and poem was just an echo of this place. We're not explorers, Ray said darkly. We're a recall function, They left a way back, Kalen whispered. And now it's opened. A new light flared ahead, the third monolith, flickering violently. The city trembled beneath their feet, as if Mars itself was remembering too much too fast. Above, the floating tower darkened, its pulse growing urgent. The sky over the city now shimmered, not just blue but shot through with fractures of red light. The veil was shrinking. "We don't have much time," Aaliyah said. "The city's waking, and it remembers something it doesn't want us to see. Or someone it doesn't want to return," Emilio added, almost to himself. Aaliyah turned toward the next memory, jaw set. "Let's find out what broke this world." And they moved forward. Chapter 5. The Edge of Reckoning. The air seemed to thicken as the team moved toward the third monolith. The city pulsed faster, vibrating beneath their boots, as if it too feared what was coming. Aaliyah paused, the others just behind her. The path ahead had become a narrow bridge of shimmering light, leading toward a vast, darkened structure. "This feels wrong," Ray muttered, his voice tight. "Like we're walking into something that's already decided our fate." "That's exactly what's happening," Aaliyah replied, her voice sharp. She could feel the weight of the city's presence, its energy pushing against her mind. It was trying to communicate, but it wasn't friendly. Not anymore. They reached the third monolith. It stood before them like a shadow, much darker than the others, its surface etched with jagged symbols that seemed to shift and grow, constantly rewriting themselves. At its base, the ground had cracked, an unnatural fissure running deep into the earth, a gash that seemed to bleed a faint red light. The team gathered around. "What is this place?" Kalen asked, her voice hushed in reverence and fear. Aaliyah took a deep breath, stepping forward. "This is where it began, the point of no return." She reached out and touched the monolith. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world bent around them. Flash, they were no longer on the platform. Instead, they stood on the edge of a city in flames. Not the city they had entered, but one far grander. The skyline was jagged, broken. The sky above was split wide open, with red storms tearing across the horizon, filling the air with ash and light. In the distance, a massive structure rose, a great machine, thrumming with power. Around it, Martians scattered, panicked, struggling to stop what had already begun. Aaliyah's heart clenched. "No," she whispered, barely able to breathe. "This is the end." One of the Martians, a leader, towering and regal, stood at the heart of the machine. His eyes burned with intensity, casting shadows across his face. The others around him tried to stop him, but he was unshaken, determined. "We have no choice," he said in their ancient language, but the translation whispered clearly in Aaliyah's mind. "We will burn the seed before it falls into their hands." The scene blurred, the machine roaring louder. Then Aaliyah saw it. A human figure, emerging from the smoke. It was not one of their team, but someone familiar. A woman, her face pale and full of purpose. She was dressed in a suit designed for deep space, a helmet tucked beneath her arm. "No, it can't be," Aaliyah gasped. It was the same woman from the earlier vision, the one who had stood before. The Martians clutching the seed, but this time she was alone, and she was standing directly in front of the machine. She's the one who started it," Emilio said, his voice barely audible. "She's the reason Mars fell." Suddenly, the ground shuddered. The Martian leader reached out to stop the woman, but she didn't flinch. In one swift motion, she placed her hand on the machine. The explosion was so massive that Aaliyah felt the shockwave in her chest, a blinding light. Then, nothing. Flash and they were back. Aaliyah's hands were shaking, but she steadied herself, refusing to let her legs give way. Her suit's HUD was flashing red warnings. Something was wrong, very wrong. "What the hell did we just see?" Ray asked, his voice tight. "Mars destroyed itself," Aaliyah said quietly. "To stop Earth, from returning. That woman, she was the key. She made the choice." "Why? Why stop us?" Kalen asked, her voice growing shaky. "We've only just—" Aaliyah cut her off. Because we're too much like them. And the Martians knew it. The third monolith trembled as the air around it grew heavier. The red fissure beneath them pulsed once, sending a violent jolt through the platform. The veil overhead flickered, wildly, casting ghostly light across the city. "We're not just here to witness the past," Emilio said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're here to make it." "No," Aaliyah replied, "we're here to stop it." The red veil was closing. The Martian city, alive with its own pulse, began to shift and warp. The final message was near, but so was the truth. The woman, the one who had activated the machine, had made a choice that had led to Mars's ruin. And now, Aaliyah understood something more fundamental. They weren't just visitors. They were the descendants of an ancient war. The last remnants of a people who had failed. "It's happening again," Kaylin said, stepping back. "The cycle. We're repeating the same pattern." Aaliyah didn't look back. Her eyes were locked on the final monolith, glowing with an intense, nearly unbearable light. There was no turning back. Only one path forward, and the question lingered in her mind like a seed of dread. Were they meant to stop it? Or were they the ones who were always supposed to destroy Mars? Chapter 6. The Choice We Made. The final monolith loomed before them, its surface a deep crimson, unlike the others. As the team approached, the ground beneath their feet began to shift. The very earth seemed to be alive, groaning and pulsing, with a rhythm that wasn't entirely natural. The sky overhead was nearly black now, streaked with red lightning that sparked intermittently. The atmosphere felt charged, pressing down on them as if the very air knew what was coming. "This is it," Ray said, his voice tense. "This is where we make our decision." Aaliyah nodded but didn't speak. The weight of their situation was suffocating. "The final monolith," Kaylin muttered, scanning it with her HUD. "The signal is stronger here than anywhere else." She stepped forward, reaching out to touch it, but Aaliyah grabbed her arm. "Wait!" Aaliyah's voice was low, filled with a dread she couldn't shake. "This doesn't feel right." A low hum echoed from the monolith as Kaylin pulled her arm away. The symbols on its surface shifted, rotating and rearranging, coalescing into one simple word: choose. The word echoed in their minds, a resonance that made Aaliyah's stomach turn. Her heartbeat quickened. "Choose what?" Kaylin whispered. "I don't know," Aaliyah replied, her voice barely a murmur. "But I'm afraid we're being given a choice we're not ready to make." A voice broke through the tension, a voice they'd all heard before. "You have arrived as it was foreseen. You must choose the future, for it is entwined with the past." The voice wasn't the same as before. It was clearer, more commanding. Aaliyah could feel it inside her mind, settling deep in her thoughts, like it was part of her. "What do you mean?" Ray demanded. "Who are you?" The monolith responded with a visual flash, projecting an image of the Martian leader, the same one they'd seen in the memory. He stood alone, surrounded by ruins. His eyes burned with intensity, the weight of the decision on his shoulders. "We knew what would happen if you returned. We knew you would find the seed. The choice that you must make will determine everything." The leader's voice was full of regret. And something else. Fear. The vision shifted, and suddenly they were standing in the ruins of the Martian city. The landscape was scorched, charred remnants of a once grand civilization, now reduced to ash. A faint, unnatural light flickered from the tower in the distance, casting eerie shadows across the devastated city. "Why?" Aaliyah whispered. "Why destroy your world?" The Martian leader appeared in front of them once again, eyes filled with sorrow. "We did not destroy it, human. We sealed it. We sacrificed our world to protect yours. The seed, it was a gift and a curse. It was meant to be a shield, but it became a weapon. Earth is our legacy. We are the architects of your kind." The truth hit them like a punch to the gut. The Martians didn't just plant a seed on Earth. They had created humanity to be a tool, a vessel for their own genetic legacy. And when they had realized what the seed had turned into, they'd sealed their world to prevent Earth from following in their footsteps. But it was worse than that. The last monolith glowed again, and the voice returned. The future is already written. The choice is simple. You may return to your world, bringing with you the knowledge to rebuild, or you may choose to destroy the seed, ending the cycle once and for all. No, Emilio whispered, his face pale. No, they're asking us to decide whether we live or die, whether we preserve what was left of them, or erase it all. Aaliyah took a step forward, but her legs felt weak. The weight of the decision was almost unbearable. She looked at her team, each of them as lost and afraid as she was. She didn't know what to do. They were on the brink of something enormous, something that could change everything. We don't have to decide right now, Aaliyah said, trying to steady her breath. We need to understand more. We need to know what happens if we choose either path. But the voice interrupted her. The time to choose has come. You cannot wait any longer. The veil grows weaker. The city will not hold forever. Choose or be consumed by the past. Aaliyah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of it all. The past, the present, the future. She felt a sudden surge of clarity, the knowledge of what had to be done. The team waited, breathless. Finally, Aaliyah spoke. We don't erase our past, she said, her voice strong, unwavering. But we don't have to repeat it either. The monolith hummed louder, and the tower above them glowed brighter. The final choice had been made. We choose the future, Aaliyah said. As her words echoed across the city, the ground beneath them rumbled. The red veil above them shimmered, shifting in a wave of color and light, and with that choice, the last truth was revealed. Chapter 7. The Shattered Seed. The moment Aaliyah's words resonated across the Martian city, something shifted. The ground beneath them trembled, and the tower in front of them pulsed with an intensity that nearly blinded them. The red veil above them flickered and warped, creating strange, fractal patterns in the sky. It's happening, Kaylin said, her voice filled with awe. The energy. It's reacting to the choice. The monolith hummed louder, the symbols on its surface, flashing more rapidly than before. For a moment, Aaliyah felt an overwhelming rush of understanding. The past, the present, the connection between their world and the one that came before it. It was all falling into place. But then, a sudden scream pierced through the air, deep and primal, like the wailing of a dying creature. What the hell was that? Ray asked, stepping back. It's not over, Emilio said. That wasn't just the monolith reacting. In an instant, the city seemed to change. The air thickened, like something was awakening from deep within the planet. The walls of the buildings around them began to crack and bleed light, as if the structures themselves were dissolving. The pulse of the energy, the one that had seemed so controlled moments ago, grew erratic, flickering between red and white, casting strange shadows on the ground. Something's wrong, Aaliyah said, her voice tight with rising panic. The city's reacting to our choice, but it wasn't supposed to be like this. Kaylin stepped forward, her eyes scanning the monolith's surface, the symbols now, scrambling into an impossible sequence. She backed away, her face going pale. The veil is collapsing, the city is dying. They turned toward the sky. The red veil above them, once an ethereal barrier, now appeared as a fragile membrane. Stretched too thin, it flickered with flashes of red lightning, and where it once held the planet's atmosphere in check, it now seemed to be losing its grip on the balance of the environment. The ground beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a glowing chasm, an abyss deep within the core of Mars. Aaliyah's heart raced as she took a step toward the chasm. There, shimmering in the darkness, was something that had never been seen before. The seed. But it wasn't the small, contained object they had expected. It was massive, twisted, pulsing, and surrounded by a network of strange biomechanical roots, all connected to the Martian soil. It throbbed with energy, its core crackling with raw power. That's the seed? Ray asked, his voice faltering. Aaliyah nodded slowly. But it's changed. This isn't just a seed of knowledge, this is the heart of Mars. This is what the Martians left behind to propagate their legacy. Suddenly a voice boomed in their minds. a familiar presence, now filled with urgency. You have chosen, but you do not understand the cost. The seed was not meant to be preserved nor to be destroyed. It was meant to end. The voice shifted into something new, something colder. Not the Martian leader, not the city's voice. Something far older, something that had been dormant beneath Mars for eons. You have awakened it. You have unlocked the path, but now there is no turning back. The ground rumbled, shaking. More violently than before, Aaliyah felt the pull. The irresistible force of the seed, its power calling to her. It was connected to her, connected to them all. She staggered back, but the connection was growing stronger. She could feel her heart race, her pulse syncing with the rhythm of the seed. The very air around her seemed to hum with a familiar, terrifying energy. "What the hell is happening?" Emilio shouted, struggling to stay on his feet as the tremors intensified. "It's trying to fuse with us," Aaliyah said, her voice low. "It's trying to use us." The seed was alive. It had been waiting. And now it was trying to merge with them. Kaylin stepped forward, holding her hands out. "We need to stop it, Aaliyah. If it merges with us, we might not survive it." Aaliyah's mind raced. She knew what was happening. This wasn't just a choice about saving Earth. This was about defining what Earth would become. The seed was not just Martian. It was the bridge between worlds, the culmination of an ancient power. But it was more than that. The seed wasn't meant to preserve life. It was a prison, one that had kept something buried beneath Mars, locked away for millennia. And now, they had unleashed it. "We have to make sure it doesn't take control," Aaliyah said, her voice shaking. "We need to sever the connection." She turned to the team, her gaze hard. "Do whatever it takes. We can't let this thing become what it was always meant to be." The monolith before them began to glow fiercely, and the seed's light responded in kind, growing brighter and brighter. The walls of the city began to collapse, the very foundations of Martian civilization crumbling beneath the intensity of the power they had awoken. "Aaliyah," Kaylin's voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "It's too late, we've already made the choice." Aaliyah stood at the edge of the chasm, staring into the abyss. The future was uncertain. The seed pulsed one last time, releasing a wave of energy that sent a shockwave through the entire city. The red veil above them shattered, sending fragments of its glowing threads spiraling across the sky. The world seemed to fracture, splitting between past and future, between humanity's origins and its destiny. "Whatever happens," Aaliyah whispered, "we can't let it destroy us." Chapter 8. The Final Horizon. The city crumbled around them, the sky overhead fractured into 1,000 jagged shards of red light as the red veil shattered completely. It had held Mars in a fragile balance for millennia, but now it was gone. In its place, a great storm brewed, a tempest of energy that seemed to pull the very fabric of space and time, distorting everything it touched. "What have we done?" Kaylin whispered, her voice thick with regret. The storm above them thundered as if answering her. "We didn't know," Aaliyah replied, though even her words felt hollow in the face of the devastation. "We didn't understand what we were waking up." The seed's power had grown unstoppable, pulsing violently with each beat. The roots of its biomechanical form writhed, stretching and expanding like something alive. It was no longer just a seed. It had become something far more dangerous. "We need to stop it," Ray said, his voice full of urgency. "We can't let this, whatever it is, merge with Mars. If it does, it'll destroy everything." Aaliyah nodded, but deep down, she feared that it was already too late. The seed had already claimed them in some way. Its energy had embedded itself within their minds. She could feel it, pulling at her consciousness, whispering promises of power, of control. "The city's collapsing," Emilio said, pointing toward the horizon. "We need to get to the core now." The team moved toward the chasm where the seed's energy was focused. The ground beneath their feet continued to crack and groan, shifting as if the entire planet was shifting its very foundation. The air had grown dense, heavy with an almost suffocating presence. It was as though Mars itself was resisting their attempt to stop it. Aaliyah's pulse pounded in her ears, her breath shallow. She reached for the control panel on her suit, checking her energy levels and the integrity of their equipment. Nothing was working right. Every system flickered, static, lapping at the edges of their HUDs. "It's like it's interfering with everything," Kalen said. "We can't even trust our tech anymore." "We don't need it," Aaliyah replied, her voice firm. "We just need to get to the core. If we can stop the seed's heart, we can stop it from merging with Mars." As they approached the chasm, Aaliyah felt a sudden shift in the air. A presence, familiar yet otherworldly, swept over her mind. The seed was aware of them. It was reaching out, trying to connect to each of them to control them. "It's trying to take us," Ray said, eyes wide with fear. "Don't let it," Aaliyah urged, her voice strained. "Focus, stay focused." But even as she spoke, she could feel it, the seed's pull, stronger now than ever before. It was as if the very atmosphere of Mars had changed, as if the seed had awakened something deep beneath the surface, something that had been lying dormant for eons. "We have to end this," Kalen said, "before it finishes what it started." As they reached the heart of the chasm, the ground beneath them began to glow, and a deep, guttural sound filled the air. The seed's power was converging here. Its core was exposed, a shimmering mass of pulsating light, surrounded by a network of dark tendrils that seemed to stretch out into the very heart of Mars. Aaliyah felt her head swim as the power pressed in on her. The seed was alive and it was hungry. "It's too late!" Emilio shouted. "We can't stop this!" But Aaliyah's eyes locked onto the central core of the seed. It was pulsing, throbbing with a power that made her entire body ache. It was like the seed had been waiting for this moment, waiting for them to arrive so that it could take everything. "We stop it now," Aaliyah said firmly, her voice cutting through the panic. "We finish what we started." She stepped forward, her suit's hands reaching toward the core. The power surged around her, but she focused. She had to. Suddenly, the seed's energy flared, a blast of raw force pushing them back. Aaliyah was thrown to the ground, but her suit's stabilizers kicked in just in time, keeping her from falling too far. She struggled to stand, her legs trembling under the force of the wave. But as she stood, she saw something. The seed was flickering. Its once unyielding structure now seemed to be splitting at the seams. A ripple of energy expanded outward, disintegrating. The roots that had spread across the surface of Mars. "It's losing its grip," Kalen said, her voice full of disbelief. It's dying." Aaliyah didn't wait. She lunged toward the core, her hands reaching for the crackling heart of the seed. The moment her fingers touched its surface, a violent pulse shot through her, and she felt her mind split. Part of her was drawn into the seed, into the ancient consciousness of the Martians, of the being that had created the seed in the first place. "You were never meant to destroy us," a voice echoed in her mind, ancient and powerful. "We were always part of you." The seed was a bridge, a choice. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing in on her. She could feel the history of the Martian race, their genetic legacy, their triumphs and failures. She understood now that the seed had never been a weapon. It had been a vessel, a link between worlds, a way to preserve the Martian's essence, for a future that would never come. But that future was here. Aaliyah forced herself to focus, pushing the terrifying weight of the seed's influence out of her mind. She could feel her teammates around her, all struggling, but all holding on. With a final burst of willpower, Aaliyah reached deep into the core of the seed, grasping its heart, and severed it from the network that connected it to Mars. The ground shuddered as the seed collapsed, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the air felt still. The storm above them began to calm. The fractures in the sky slowly healed, and the red veil's shimmering light began to return to its natural state, fading back into the atmosphere. They had done it. Mars was no longer bound to the seed's power. Aaliyah stood there, breathing heavily, her hand still hovering over the collapsed core of the seed. It was over, but the cost had been high. "We did it," Ray said, his voice hoarse. We stopped it. Not just the seed, Aaliyah replied, her voice quiet. We stopped the cycle. We saved Earth, for now. Chapter 9. The Echoes of Tomorrow. The air was still. It was an eerie quiet as the team made their way back toward the now stable Martian base. The energy from the seed had subsided, and the world that had once been on the edge of collapse was beginning to heal, just like the atmosphere above them, which had returned to its former state, the red veil no longer flickering in the sky. It's done, Ray said, his voice heavy. He glanced up at the bright sky above them, now unmarred by storm clouds. I can't believe we actually did it. Kaylin, still shaken but resolute, kept her eyes fixed on the horizon. The Martian landscape stretched out before them, once again peaceful, but something felt off. I think we've just scratched the surface, she muttered. The seed is gone, but the power it released, it still lingers. Aaliyah nodded in agreement, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The connection she'd felt when she severed the seed's heart still echoed in her mind. It wasn't just the Martian consciousness. It was as if the seed had embedded something inside her, a fragment of its essence, a reminder of its legacy. The memories of Mars, of the ancient civilization that had once thrived, were now part of her. Back at the base, they prepared for their final trip back to Earth. Their mission was complete, but the weight of their success was crushing. They had stopped the seed from merging with Mars, but in doing so, they had unlocked something else. The seed was a key, a bridge to understanding humanity's origins, and it had imprinted its knowledge into their minds. You all look like ghosts, Emilio said, his voice barely above a whisper. We've saved Mars and Earth, but for how long? Aaliyah caught her breath. For how long? That was the question that haunted her. The return journey to Earth felt like a dream, quiet, reflective, and filled with more questions than answers. Their minds still hummed with the knowledge they had gained from the seed, and each of them wrestled with the implications of their actions. The seed wasn't just a Martian artifact, Kaylin said as they watched Earth grow larger on the view screen. It was our legacy, too. The Martians left us a part of themselves, something we could build on or destroy. I know, Aaliyah said, her voice low. And I'm afraid that if we carry the seed's legacy, we're going to change everything. As they neared Earth's atmosphere, they began to receive transmissions from Mission Control. They had anticipated their arrival, but the questions they were being asked weren't the ones they expected. Team, do you read us? We've got a full analysis of the data you sent back. Something's wrong. It's bigger than we thought. The voice crackled with urgency. What do you mean, bigger? Ray asked, leaning toward the comms. Punul, we did what we came to do. The seed is no longer a threat. It's not the seed, Ray, it's the signal. We're getting data from Earth's core. It's been resonating with Martian frequency patterns ever since you made contact. This isn't just a Martian connection. It's an echo, and it's coming from everywhere. The team exchanged looks, fear creeping into their expressions. They had thought their mission was a one-time intervention, a simple act of destruction to stop a dormant force. But the truth was far more complex. Earth's core was responding to the energy of the seed. Something had been activated deep beneath the planet's surface, something they hadn't anticipated. Aaliyah's pulse quickened. Could the seed's influence have spread to Earth, even after their actions on Mars? What does that mean for us? Aaliyah asked, a sense of dread creeping into her voice. We don't know yet, the voice from Mission Control replied. But whatever's happening, it's not over. The energy from the seed is propagating, spreading. It's changing Earth's very foundation. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere and began its descent. Earth, once a distant beacon, now looked fragile. The blue of the oceans, the green of the forests, the stark white of the polar ice caps, all of it seemed vulnerable, like a delicate mosaic that was shifting before their eyes. As the shuttle touched down, the weight of what lay ahead loomed over them. They had saved Mars, but at what cost? The echoes of the seed were not gone. They were beginning to grow on Earth, like a second birth, one that was inevitable, like the inevitable rise of a new dawn. The mission control team was waiting for them, their faces grim. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy, charged with unspoken fear. "We've been tracking the resonance," one of the analysts said, pointing to a screen showing a planetary map. "The signal is intensifying. It's spreading. At first we thought it was just an anomaly, but now we're sure it's connected to the seed's energy, and it's coming from multiple locations around the globe." A sick feeling crawled into Aaliyah's stomach. The seed's influence had spread undetected before, deep beneath the surface of Mars. But now it was on Earth, and Earth had no veil to protect it. "How long do we have?" she asked. "A few weeks," the analyst replied, his eyes wide with concern. "We don't know exactly what will happen, but we're looking at a global anomaly. The seed's energy is reawakening across Earth." Kaylin turned to Aaliyah, her face drawn and tired. "We stopped it on Mars, Aaliyah, but we can't stop it here, not without knowing what's at the core of this. We need to find out what the seed really is, and why it's linked to Earth." The truth was out there. The seed's legacy was not just the key to understanding the Martians, but the key to understanding the future of Earth. And now it was up to them to face the next phase, one that would determine the survival of humanity and the fate of the very planet they had fought so hard to save. The echoes of tomorrow had begun. Chapter 10. The Edge of Existence. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Back at the command center, the weight of the team's actions settled over them like a shadow. The analysts worked furiously, trying to track the growing signal that had now permeated the very core of Earth. But their efforts seemed futile, as though the energy was defying all logic, expanding beyond their understanding. Aaliyah stood at the front of the room, her mind racing. The seed's influence was growing, and they had no idea how to stop it. Every second counted. "It's like the Earth itself is being reprogrammed," Kaylin said, her voice strained. She was hunched over a terminal, her fingers moving rapidly over the holographic keyboard. "The resonances we're seeing, patterns from Mars, are now flooding the planet's core. They're not just echoes anymore, they're alive." Ray paced behind her, his hand gripping his arm. "You mean terraforming but on a planetary scale? This is what we were trying to prevent. Not just a Martian takeover, but the entire ecosystem changing, shifting, adapting." Aaliyah's eyes narrowed. She had already felt the change in the air. The seed had imprinted on them, but it hadn't just shared its knowledge. It had shared its power, a power that was now infecting Earth's very foundation. Outside the command center, the world was already beginning to shift. The weather was growing erratic. Unseasonal storms surged across continents, and global temperatures were fluctuating in unpredictable waves. The sky, once clear and tranquil, now held an ominous red tinge. Strange auroras shimmered over the poles, and deep cracks began to form in the Earth's surface. "This isn't just a planetary anomaly," Emilio said, his voice shaky. "This is a full-blown transformation." Aaliyah looked at the map of Earth's magnetic field. The lines that once ran in perfect symmetry were now distorted, almost chaotic. "We've activated something," Aaliyah murmured. "Something ancient, but it's not just an alien seed or technology. It's a form of evolution." The seed didn't just want to propagate. It wanted to reshape life itself. As they worked, a call came through from the space station, a high-priority transmission from the United Nations and world governments. "We've been monitoring your findings," the voice said, strained. "You need to stop what's happening. The seed's energy has destabilized the planet. There's no telling how much longer we have." Kaylin looked up sharply. "What do you mean, how much longer? The changes are already happening. Are you telling us it's irreversible?" The voice on the comms was somber. "The seed was not just a Martian entity. It's a universal force. We believe it is connected to a network of ancient energy nodes scattered across the galaxy. The moment you made contact with the seed, it activated an ancient system. The resonance has now shifted from Mars to Earth. What's happening isn't just the planet changing. It's the entire biosphere being recalibrated to a new equilibrium. The implications of those words hit Aaliyah like a hammer. If the seed had truly activated an intergalactic system, it meant that Earth wasn't just changing due to the seed. It was aligning with something far bigger. An ancient interstellar network that connected planets, civilizations, and ecosystems across galaxies. The system, Aaliyah whispered. It's trying to merge us with the Martian timeline. Kaylin shot up from her terminal. Wait, you mean to tell me that the entire genetic evolution of Earth is at risk? That this is like some kind of galactic reprogramming? Aaliyah nodded slowly. Exactly. If this system is linked to the seed, then it's altering the very DNA of every organism on Earth. It's not just the weather, it's the planet itself. It's rewriting our biology. A sudden shockwave rattled the walls of the command center, causing everyone to brace themselves. The earthquake was just the beginning. Across the globe, tectonic shifts were happening in real time. The planet was splitting apart, both literally and figuratively. Vast rifts opened in the ground, swallowing entire cities and forming new geological features. Oceans surged and receded, as though Earth were remaking itself under the seed's influence. We don't have much time, Ray said, gripping the edge of the table. If the system is this unstable, we need to shut it down now, before Earth completely changes. Epilogue. The last dawn. The Earth's surface was a battlefield. The cracks in the planet were widening, stretching across continents, creating vast chasms that swallowed everything in their path. The auroras from the seed's energy had become more intense, painting the sky with vivid hues of red and gold, as though the atmosphere itself was bleeding under the pressure of the energy surges. Aaliyah and her team were suited up, standing at the precipice of the largest fissure yet to open. On Earth, a rift large enough to reach the planet's core. From this deep crevice, the seed's energy radiated outward, a raw, pulsating power that seemed to pull at their very souls. They had made it this far. Now they had no choice but to face the truth. They had awakened something that was never meant to be. The ancient Martian network, linked to Earth through the seed, was on the verge of a cataclysmic collision. Their only chance to stop the disaster was to sever the connection at its source, deep within the planet's core. The ground beneath them trembled as they approached the edge of the rift. The landscape was unrecognizable now, disrupted and warped by the vast forces that were at play. The once vibrant cities were now ghostly ruins, as though Earth itself was dying in slow motion. Are we sure this is going to work? Ray asked, his voice shaky as he scanned the surroundings, ever alert. The rift continued to hum, an eerie song of imminent doom. Kaylin checked the readings on her suit's display. The energy levels are off the charts. This is it. The seed's energy is focused right below us. We need to reach the core and shut it down. If we don't, it'll keep feeding the resonance and we'll lose Earth entirely. But the risk, Emilio murmured, his eyes scanning the sky. If we enter the core, we're talking about unimaginable forces. We could trigger something worse than we can even comprehend. Aaliyah clenched her jaw, feeling the weight of their decisions bearing down on her. They had already unleashed the seed's influence on Earth. There was no turning back now. We don't have time to debate, she said firmly. This is the only way to stop it. With a heavy sense of finality, they made their way toward a massive tunnel that led deep into the Earth's crust. They would have to travel through the unstable, shifting terrain, battling extreme temperatures, unpredictable seismic activity, and the thickening energy of the seed that was distorting the very air around them. Their path was treacherous. At one point, a sudden quake caused the ground to split wide, sending rocks tumbling down the side of the chasm. Aaliyah and Kaylin barely managed to avoid the falling debris, their suits keeping them from being crushed. "Watch your step," Kaylin shouted, her voice carrying a sense of urgency that matched the rising tension in the air. Finally, they reached the heart of the rift, where the seed's energy was strongest. The temperature was unbearable here, too hot for human survival, but their suits kept them alive for now. In the center of the vast, glowing chamber, the seed pulsed like a living heart, radiating terrifying energy in all directions. The structure was no longer a simple artifact. It had become a living organism, its shape constantly shifting as though it were breathing, adapting to the environment. "It's alive," Ray said, his voice a mix of awe and terror. "It's worse than alive," Aaliyah replied, taking a step closer. "It's thinking. It's trying to merge with Earth." Kaylin adjusted her suit, her hand hovering near a control panel on her wrist. "If we can sever its link to Earth's core, it might stop the cascade. But there's no telling what will happen once we do it." They stood there for a moment, facing the terrifying reality of the task ahead. Aaliyah's mind raced. Was there any other way to save Earth? Had they doomed the planet with their very presence here? But there was no other choice. They had to act, and they had to act fast. "Let's do this," Aaliyah said with finality. "Kaylin, Ray, Emilio, get to the control panels. We're going to send a direct pulse to the seed. We need to overload it and sever its connection to the core." The team nodded, each of them moving quickly into position. They worked in synchrony, adjusting their suits and connecting their devices to the pulsating energy of the seed. The very air felt alive with power, and Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the heart of the entity. "On my mark," Aaliyah called. 3, 2, 1. "Now!" The team initiated the pulse. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest. She knew that their actions on Mars had triggered this. There was no denying it now. The seed's legacy was far more profound than they'd imagined. "We don't just need to stop the seed," Aaliyah said. "We need to sever the link between Earth and the network it's connected to. If we don't, if we can't, Earth will be rewritten completely. The very essence of life itself could be lost in the process." A sudden thought hit her. If the seed had activated a galactic system, then perhaps there was a way to find the core of the system, just as they had on Mars. But this time, they would have to go to Earth's core itself. "We need to get to the heart of the planet," Aaliyah said, her voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "We need to find where the resonance is originating from and sever the connection before the entire planet is rewritten." Kaylin looked at her with wide eyes. "You want us to go to the core? It's not like we have a shuttle that can withstand that kind of pressure." Aaliyah's mind was already working through the possibilities. They had no time to waste. They had to get to the heart of Earth. It was their only chance to reverse what had been done. "We don't have another option," she replied. "If we don't stop it now, Earth could be gone, replaced, and we'll never be able to return." As they prepared for the impossible, a final transmission came through from Mission Control. "We've lost contact with several regions," the voice said urgently. "We're tracking large-scale energy surges near the poles. You need to act now." Aaliyah took a deep breath and turned to the team. "Let's move. It's now or never." With no time left and the weight of the universe bearing down on them, the team set out for the final confrontation. Their mission had been never-ending, and the path ahead would either lead to salvation or annihilation. The echoes of tomorrow would soon collide with the final act of their journey. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.